Liberalism in international relations is a theoretical perspective that emphasizes cooperation, interdependence, and the role of institutions in shaping global politics. It asserts that states are not solely driven by power and self-interest, but also by norms, values, principles such as democracy, human rights, and economic prosperity. Liberals believe that international institutions, law, and norms can foster peaceful conflict resolution and promote cooperation among states, making war less likely and progress more achievable. Liberalism is defined as a school of thought that focuses on the potential for cooperation among states and other actors in the international system. It highlights the importance of international organizations, non-governmental actors, and multilateral approaches to address global challenges. Liberals reject the realist notion that international relations are inevitably dominated by a power politics, instead arguing that mutual benefits, shared norms, and institutions can lead to peace and progress. There are four founding fathers of liberalism theory, or we known as thinkers. Firstly, John Locke. He often regarded as the father of modern liberalism. He developed the theory of the social contract, arguing that government must protect individual rights to life, liberty, and property, and that its legitimacy depends on the consent of the governed. Next is Adam Smith. Known for his contribution to economic liberalism, Smith argued that societies prosper when individuals are free to pursue their self-interest within a system of private property and competitive markets, laying the groundwork for liberal economic thought. The third one is John Stuart Mill. He expanded liberal thought by defending individual freedoms, particularly free speech, and advocating for limits on societal power over the individual. His work helped shape both classical and new liberalism. While lastly, Montesquieu. Montesquieu is recognized for his advocacy of the separation of powers and constitutional government, which are central to liberal political theory. He emphasized the importance of limiting governmental authority to protect individual rights and prevent tyranny. These thinkers laid the intellectual foundation for liberalism in both domestic and international contexts, shaping the theory's focus on individuals' rights, cooperation, and institutional solutions to global challenges. That's all from me, and then I will pass to the next presenter.
So today, I will be presenting about the 5 main principles of liberalism in international relations. Liberalism is an important theory because it explains how peace and cooperation can happen in the international system. So, I will go through each principle in detail together with clear examples. So, the first principle of liberalism is cooperation among states. Liberalism believes countries can work together peacefully through negotiation, diplomacy, and constant communication. It does not see war as something natural or unavoidable. Instead, states can find shared interests such as economic growth, protecting the environment, technology, or keeping peace in the region. When countries see they benefit more than working together, they choose dialogue over conflict. We can see this in real life through climate agreements, trade partnership, cultural exchange, peace talk, and humanitarian mission. This example shows that international politics is not just about competition, but also about countries cooperating to reach common goals. The second principle is the role of international institutions. Liberalism argues that organizations such as the United Nations, the World Trade Organization, the European Union, and ASEAN play a vital role in maintaining peace and order. These institutions help create rules and agreements that guide how states should behave. They promote a platform for countries to discuss problems, negotiate solutions, and also to avoid misunderstanding. For example, the United Nations helps with peacekeeping missions, and ASEAN promote regional security and economic cooperation. Institutions act like referees. They ensure fairness, promote transparency, and encourage predictable behavior among states. This reduces conflict and builds trust. The third principle is economic interdependence. According to liberalism, when countries are connected through trade, investment, and global market, they become dependent on each other's stability. This interdependence makes conflict less likely because war will damage both economies. So, instead of fighting, countries focus on maintaining peaceful relationships to protect their economic interests. Example include the European Union, where the members trade happily with one another. Their economies are so linked that war is considered too costly. ASEAN also encouraged peace in Southeast Asia by increasing trade and investment among member states. The main idea is simple. When countries gain profit together, they prefer cooperation over conflict. The fourth principle of liberalism is that multiple actors shape global politics. Liberalism believes that the world is not controlled only by state, but many different actors influence international events, including multinational companies like Apple, Toyota, and Samsung, international organizations such as UNICEF, civil society groups, the media, influential individuals. These actors help spread ideas, raise awareness, protect human rights, and support development. For example, multinational companies affect global trade, NGOs push for humanitarian action, and the media create public pressure on governments to act. This principle shows that international relations today are complex. Power is shared among many actors and not just government. So the fifth principle is peace through shared values and norms. Liberalism argues that countries sharing similar values such as democracy, freedom, justice, and human rights are more likely to trust each other. The democratic peace theory suggests that democracies rarely go to war because they are transparent, accountable, and favor peaceful solutions. Countries share values often form alliances, sign international agreements, and work together on global issues like human rights protection, humanitarian aid, and environmental sustainability. By following shared norms, countries can reduce misunderstandings and build long-term stability. Next, I will pass to the next presenter.
Next, I'm going to present the analysis of liberalism theory. Liberalism stands as dominant and influential theory within international relations because it offers a compelling explanation for international cooperations, progress, and order. Liberalism proposes that human rationality combined with economic interdependence can mitigate the effects of international anarchy, which will lead more peaceful global system. The core strength of liberalism theory is political strength. The political strength of liberalism is defined as the political theory that practices the natural freedom of human being with individual autonomy. Therefore, it limits the political power to prevent dictatorships and authoritarian. The separation of powers will promote checks and balances to ensure that no one holds the absolute power and prevent the concentration of power to prevent authoritarian abuse. It is emphasized by this theory that international institutions such as United Nations, North Atlantic Treaty Organizations, and World Trade Organizations are crucial mechanisms to manage anarchy, facilitate cooperation, and reduce conflict. Therefore, when institutions function effectively, the political stability will increase, which strengthens the overall political system. Liberalism theory contributes to political strength in international system by its ability to foster peace, stability, and cooperation among states through institutions and normative mechanisms. Furthermore, the central tenet of liberalism theory is the democratic peace, or known as DPT, that is deeply rooted in core liberalism principles. Liberalism emphasizes reasons, human rights, and political freedoms, which act as major factors that prevents countries from declaring war. This theory shares the ideas of peaceful conflict resolutions, respect for rights, and negotiations, making them hesitate to use force against each other. Liberalism's second major strength lies in its explanation for sustained global economic development and the corresponding reduction in interstate conflict because the theory practices economic freedom and trade that contributes to peace. Liberalism theory emphasizes absolute gains, the total increase in wealth and welfare for all parties in a transaction over the relative gains prioritized by realism. The principles of free trade by liberal thinkers encourage nations to specialize in producing goods, services where people have comparative advantages. It will lead to better efficiency, innovations, and global output. It maximizes collective wealth and raise overall living standards. Furthermore, when states practice liberalism, they focus on maximizing their own economic benefits, find various opportunities for mutually beneficial cooperation, which lessens zero-sum competition. Next, the vast web of global trade, finance and investment creates economic interdependence which act as a powerful deterrent to conflict. States that are deeply reliant on one another for imports, exports, foreign direct investment face devastating economic consequences if they initiate hostilities. A war could instantly disrupt supply chains, destroy assets value and lead to massive economic losses for exceeding any potential territorial gain. The cost of breaking economic ties will raise the price of war to an acceptable level. The strength of liberalism in international relations is evident in its multifaceted approach in word order. Politically, it provides a sound theoretical basis for explaining the democratic peace and the functional role of international institutions in reducing the risk of anarchy. Economically, its tenets of commercial liberalism and focus on absolute gain successfully account for economic growth in global trade. While liberalism offers a compelling framework for explaining cooperation, peace and prosperity, it faces significant theoretical and empirical challenges. Critics argue that its core tenets often overlook the enduring realities of power politics and systemic economic exploitation. The principal weaknesses of liberalism in international relations can be categorized into two major areas. The first one is its prioritization of the individualism. Liberalism is foundational strength rooted in Enlightenment thought, centers on the individual as the primary unit of moral and political concern. While this theory is admirable in domestic politics, applying this principle internationally reveals several weaknesses that undermine its explanatory power. Realists argue that liberalism fundamentally misunderstands the structure of the international system. Liberalism's focus on institutions and norms fails to eliminate the fundamental security dilemma, where actions taken by one state to increase its security area perceived as threats by others. When vital interests are at stake, states prioritize national security and survival over abstract liberal values or international rules. The collapse of cooperative efforts when great power rivalry intensifies, it illustrates that the state, driven by collective self-interest, still reigns supreme over the individuals. Moreover, the second major weakness of this theory is its failure to adequately address market instability and deepening inequality. Commercial liberalism, which links free trade and economic interdependence to peace, faces profound criticisms from radical and critical theories regarding its economic consequences. A core liberal tenet is that market should be free from excessive government interventions to function efficiently. This leads to restrictions of the financial sector, which can fuel instability. The regulations allow banks and financial institutions to engage in riskier lending practices and complex financial innovations in pursuit of higher returns. The absence of strict rules encourages this risk-taking. The weaknesses of liberalism stem fundamentally from its optimism regarding human nature, cooperation, and its idealizations of markets. Politically, it often fails to adequately address the relentless logic of the security dilemma and the enduring primacy of state power in an anarchic system. Economically, its reliance on free markets contributes to systemic instability and a structure that critics argue reinforces global inequality rather than eradicates it. That's all from me. Next, I'm going to pass to the next presenter.
I will present about the impacts of liberalism in international relations. Firstly, the impacts of liberalism in international relations is by establishments of global institutions. This is because of the potential to collaborate based on mutual interests. Every country would work together to overcome any issues and achieve common goals. Usually, the establishment is facilitated by international institutions, agreements, and framework for the collaboration. For example, the establishment of United Nations and the World Trade Organizations that aims to foster peace, security, and economic stability through collective efforts and adherence to shared rules. Secondly is promoting democracy in international relations. This is because democracy can decrease the possibility to war with one another. It also shows the pathway to a more stable and cooperative international order. For example, a European Union or EU is a unique political and economic union of member states that share the common values of democracy, human rights, and the rule of law. EU also enable the deep cooperation and integration in economic and social benefits for its members. Thirdly is economic interdependence and free trade. This is because it believes in the potential for cooperation and progress through international institutions, free trade and democracy. For example, by supporting for free trade and open markets as a way to promote economic growth and interdependence. This advocates for the use of economic incentives and sanctions to encourage compliance with international norms and agreements. Moreover, when countries trade a lot, invest in each other and have the open markets, they become linked together because they depend on each other to make money. And lastly is protecting the human rights. This is because every person has rights that must be given by the governments. The liberalism strengthened the human rights by creating the shared values or the shared rules that using by international to pressure and to make the governments treat people more fairly. For example, the International Court of Justice or ICJ hearing cases on Gaza allegations of genocide that made by Israel. So, governments must be accountable not only to their own citizens but also to the international community. This means if some country violates human rights such as killing civilians, discriminating against minorities, or restricting political freedom, other countries have the right to speak up and to apply pressure or use international institutions to demand justice.
In summary, liberalism in international relations offer a valuable analytic lens that emphasizes optimism, rationality, and collaboration. It challenges us to consider not only how states compete, but also how they can work together to address shared challenges, whether in security, trade, human rights, or environmental protection. This perspective remains crucial for understanding the dynamics of the modern international system. That's all from us. Thank you. The first question, is liberalism compatible with multicultural societies? Discuss with arguments. Liberalism is generally compatible with multicultural societies because it protects individuals' rights regardless of cultural background and encourages tolerance, pluralism, and equal treatment under the law. However, tensions may arise when cultural practice conflicts with liberal values, for example, like gender equality or freedom of expression. Supporters argue that liberalism provides a fair framework for diversity, while critics claim it can impose Western norms. Overall, liberalism can support multiculturalism if rights and cultural practice are negotiated within a shared legal and moral framework.
To answer the next question, which is why does liberalism emphasize freedom of speech and expression? Liberalism emphasizes freedom of speech because it views open expression as essential for individual autonomy, democratic participation, and the marketplace of ideas. When people are free to express opinions, society can challenge authority, correct errors, and promote truth. Protecting speech also prevents state abuse of power and support pluralism in diverse society.
To answer the question, which is how does promoting democracy in international relations help reduce the conflicts between states? So the answer will be promoting democracy reduces conflicts because democratic countries usually solve problems through negotiation, diplomacy, and public accountability instead of war. When citizens have power to vote and question the governments, leaders avoid aggressive actions that could harm the country. This creates a more peaceful and predictable international environment, as seen in the European Union, where the democratic states cooperate deeply and rarely experience a violent conflict.
The next question is that we receive is, to what extent has liberalism shaped modern democratic institutions? Liberalism has significantly shaped modern democracies by embedding the principles such as rule of law, separation of powers, constitutional rights, and free elections. Many countries, including the UK, US, Canada, and numerous European democracies, rely on liberal concepts like individual rights, freedom of the press, and checks and balance. Even non-Western democracies often adopt liberal framework in their institutions, such as judicial independence and civil liberties.